If you are iffy about rodents, just hold off on this video, maybe skip to the next one. But if you like seeing cute little mice, this one's for you. So, this is a field mouse, and I get them all the time at pretty much any house that I've lived in Tennessee. So, it's pretty common, and I'm definitely not scared of them or anything at this point. But to start out with the eyes, because this is coming from a higher angle instead of from a side view or front view, it's coming from up top. The eyes are kind of weird and wonky looking, but I'm just trusting the process at this point and going along with the shape of what I'm seeing more so than what I want to see. So there's a big difference between what I want it to look like and what is actually there. So draw what is actually there and you might get some good results. But yeah, at this point in time, it looks very weird. But just trust it. Keep going. Make sure you're working on the shading and working on the highlights. You can see that I applied a little bit of highlight underneath the eyes for both sides. And then moving on to the mouth, this area has a little bit of a pink tone, a little bit of some orange in there. I do apply a little bit of pink throughout the rest of the portrait, but there's quite a bit of pink in that mouth area. And if you know what mice look like, they definitely have more of a pink nose and mouth than the rest of the body. But in this portrait, there is a lot of orange undertones, so that's why I'm applying this nice lighter orange. It's not really too bright or too dark, but it does have a little bit of a brown tint to it, so I think it's going to be really helpful for the first base. And you want to draw in the same direction as the fur, so that's where I'm going. And I'm not drawing like filling in all the spaces. I'm just filling it in about most of the way and then leaving room for some of the lighter areas. So as you're drawing, think about that, that you need to leave room for more of those highlighted areas, and then you can go back over it with more details. But when you're adding the details for most of the time, you're still kind of avoiding that area. The ears are very basic, different colored pink. So you can see I'm using a little bit like a flesh toned pink and then a darker, you could call it like a darker mauve color, and a little bit of some dark sepia, which is really just more like a purple tone. So if you have like a gray purple, that would be perfect. I'm not the best at describing colors, but I do try to explain or describe them in the way of what they actually look like. Sometimes I will describe them based off of the name that they're actually called, but not everybody has that type of color pencil. So I try to kind of go by what it looks like more than anything else. So once again, use that mauve pink to kind of incorporate those tones into the portrait. And then, of course, like the left-hand side and a little bit of the right-hand side, but mostly the left is darker because that's where the direction of the lighting is coming from, is from the top part, top right-hand side, really. And using a blend of, so this color here is like a gray, it's dark sepia. It's a gray, purple, brown. Those are the colors that I'm seeing in this color pencil. So you can use that to incorporate still sporadically. It is still spread out, just like all of the colors, they're very much spread out. So this whole, for mice and raccoons, like rodents in general, they have fur that is very spread out and dispersed. So you want to kind of draw those layers in that same method, but you're going to apply a lot of layers, mostly for this particular rodent. But that's how it works, because as you build up your layers, you're still going to see the direction of the fur. You're still going to see all of those other colors as you're building it up. I'm using a mineral spirit oil with that paintbrush, if that's what you're curious what that is. I talk about it in every single video, but if you're new here, that's what that is. You can get it on Amazon, or if you want to check out the materials that I do use, I will have an ebook listed below with all the materials that I currently use almost on the daily. But it is wonderful because what it does is it blends all the colors together, it makes it more saturated, and then when you're applying more color pencils, it actually makes it more smooth and easier to add details. So I'm using a lighter, I don't even know what you would call that, but it's a lighter purple. It's like a dusty purple to work in some of the lighter areas. And then as I'm applying more layers, I start to use darker colors. But I did start out with some darker colors, and then you can see it got more saturated. And then it lightened it up. So you can still keep doing that method. You can use a little bit of darker and then use some lighter colors to lighten it up. Kind of go back and forth on it. I go back and forth on it a lot in this portrait. Now it's time to bring out the brown. I believe this is a Van Dyke brown, but I'm not entirely sure. Either Van Dyke or the burnt sienna brown. But either way, a nice warm brown color pencil is ideal because okay, so field mice are very brown, but look at the colors that I'm actually applying here. I barely use the brown color pencil, which is crazy. That's what happens almost all the time when I'm drawing brown fur, is I end up using like 5 other different colors before I end up using the brown. Same thing goes with black fur. I end up using a huge variety of colors before I end up using black. So when you are drawing other animals that are darker, you want to work on the undertones, just as I'm doing here. I'm working on the undertones first before I'm actually applying the colors that you would immediately see in that animal. Like a brown dog. Think about the colors that are underneath all of that, or what are the colors that are reflecting in that brown fur, and draw those first and build up your layers with that variety of colors first, and then apply the brown, and then you can still continue building up those layers, working on the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. So it's the same method for the rest of the body. You're just building up those layers, just one pencil at a time. And I'm always talking about use a variety of different colors. It can still be a variety of different browns, different orange, different blues, whatever, but make sure that you're using a variety, because the more variety you have, even if it's of one type of color, the more realistic your portrait's going to look, and the more fun it's going to be too. So yes, I end up holding a bunch of color pencils in my left hand as I'm drawing with my right, and I swap them out all the time. And yes, they fall all the time. Luckily, it's not that far from the floor, so they don't end up breaking, but it's a pain in the butt to have to pick them up all the time. But it is what it is, and I would rather hold the pencils in my hand than have to pick up each one from me laying them down on the side or something, because I'm constantly swapping them out. So I can't just like put them down on a surface and have to keep moving my head and my arm to go grab another one. So I just grab them all in my left hand, have them right there. If you're wondering too, like what kind of table setup I have, I'm using a architecture table, so it's upright, and then I have studio lighting that is pointing down at the picture, at the drawing, and then I have my DSLR camera to record everything that I'm doing. So I used to be a photographer before this, so I had all of the photography equipment. I did not know how to really set up the studio setup originally. I don't have as much experience with studio setup as much as more natural lighting and whatnot, but I figured it out, and this is what works best for me while I'm recording. And I think it's just a lot of fun because then I can actually talk to you and explain everything and record them, turn them into classes, and help other students while not having to go anywhere, because this is such a narrow like niche or hobby that not a lot of people know how to do it or really even know that you can draw realistically with colored pencils. So I want to be one of the first ones to share with you guys the methods that I use and the fact that you can draw realistically with colored pencils, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. Once you understand how colored pencils work through practice, then it becomes less intimidating. You end up not being nearly as stressed out, and you have a little bit more patience. Like, I've learned to have a lot more patience in life in general just by drawing with colored pencils. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put on light music, or I'll put on a podcast or something on YouTube, something that's long form, and that gets me into that long form setting where I can sit down and just enjoy the process itself. Because yeah, it's going to take a while. I end up drawing a lot faster than I used to. So some people will ask me, how long did that take you? And I will say, like, okay, an 8x10 took me like anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. Well, actually, it doesn't. It takes me about 4 to 5 hours, depending on the subject. But it doesn't take me nearly as long as most people would think now than before, because yes, it did take me a long time, but I definitely would like to say thanks to mineral spirit oil, because that has actually shortened my time very, like, quite a lot, actually, probably almost in half. And it also helps to ease up the cramps in my hand. I'm pretty sure I developed carpal tunnel because of drawing so heavy over the years before realizing that I can just use mineral spirit oil. And if you want to use mineral spirit oil, make sure you have the right kind of paper. Try out some sort of watercolor paper or vellum paper, but all of that is listed in the ebook below. So now you can see there's a lot of layers happening here, and I'm using all sorts of different orange tones and some pinks in there and some brown. There's just a lot that's really going on in this little rodent here. And really, just if you were to step back and look at this as a non-artist, you would not think that there were that many different colors in here. You just kind of think it's like, okay, so it's brown. It's a field mouse. You know, it's brown most of the time. Well, no, there's just a huge variety of color that was actually in here. So if you're actually interested in learning to draw, I do have a lot of at your own pace, so you can play or pause at your leisure online classes. They are on my website. If you go to laurenkleinart.com, or you can click the link below and go to take a class. You can pick out whatever animal you want to learn to draw. I've got instructions that you can download beforehand with the color pencils that I use, and a little trace that you can trace beforehand too. And you just follow along, play or pause at your leisure. Most of them are in real time, not like super fast like this. So it should be really helpful. And yes, they're a couple of hours long, but trust me, you're going to end up enjoying it and not really caring so much that it is a couple of hours long. If you want to take a step further than that, I do have an 8-week program where you can learn to draw your own pet. It's also great for wildlife. So each section, each week is a different type of feature. So it's different types of fur, different colored fur, different textured fur, different animal features like eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and each one of those weeks. And then by the end, you follow along a full pet portrait class. And then at the very end, the very last week is when you draw your own pet and you get to ask me questions. So you can ask me questions throughout the whole thing, but you draw your own pet, send me a picture of it. I'd love to see it, and ask me any questions that you have. I would love to help you out. I want more and more people to get into this practice of drawing because it is so beneficial for your mindset. It's so relaxing. It also teaches you patience. Honestly, I'll go a little bit further and go into my personal life. Drawing saved me from a deep depression that I had. I had postpartum depression. I had depression before that, but after having my first son, it got really, really bad. And I just kept pushing myself to draw because I knew I had potential in it. There was something there that I really enjoyed, even though it was really frustrating and I didn't quite understand the techniques and my hand would hurt all the time. But I still kept going because there was something about it that really got me into the moment and helped me out of my mental state. And I still continue to do it to this day because I love just getting to sit and be in the moment with drawing and just, I don't know. I mean, I could keep explaining it to you, but you won't get it until you actually do it. So that's why I want to teach others, because I think it's a really good outlet to get yourself into that you can use and maybe draw other people's pet portraits or maybe sell your art. Whatever it is, you got to find your motive to draw and to practice. My motive is I just really enjoy being in the moment with it. I love selling the work. I love teaching. I also love providing a beautiful pet portrait and giving it to my clients. It's a personal item for them to enjoy, especially if their pet had passed. So that's why I do it. And I'm hoping that other aspiring artists will get into it too and enjoy it for similar reasons. Enough talking though. Here's the tail. And there's not a lot going on, but there is a lighter bit at the top and the bottom of it. So just kind of draw it more darker towards the center. And then there's a little bit of some lines too. Like if you look at a mouse tail or a rat tail, that's how they are. So I'm just using a dark sepia color to kind of draw some different lines there. And add a little bit of some orange in there. That way it looks cohesive to the rest of the portrait. But we're not done quite yet. I need to add a little bit of some shading because this mouse is not just floating in the air. I know a lot of my portraits I don't add shading, but this one I need to practice it more. So that's what I'm doing here is I'm practicing a little bit of some shading, and I think it ended up turning out really well. It could have been better, but you're your own worst critic. And when you look at your own work, you will criticize it more than anybody else ever will. So when you're doing that, just keep that in mind that you're going to be more negative than anybody else will be. You got to turn that around and see, all right, so what is it that maybe needs to change? What can I do better? Not, oh, this looks horrible and I don't like it. I'm not good at this, blah, blah, blah. turn it around and say, how can I make this better? I know that there are some things that I see that does not look good or I don't approve of. I want it to look better. And that's how you keep getting better at it. There's so many things that I'm already seeing in this portrait that I want to fix, but there's a certain point that you also have to move on. So sometimes you just have to call it and move on to another one and get better with the other one. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.